Let's talk about forgotten B&B lugs.
See, I suffer from short-term memory loss.
Short-term memory loss.
What was I just talking about? I won't be discussing every bread and butter lug, such as the 4947 or the 3920 peanut lug, etc. All of those are covered in other videos on my channel. We're going to cover two specific B&B lugs that are basically lost in the history of the Rogers, Ohio timeline. First, what I call the small coffin lug. Not to be confused with the more well-known, full-sized, flat-top bread and butter lug, also known as the coffin lug. You can see the size difference here. This small coffin lug is the same size as the slightly later 3917 ridged lug and has the exact same footprint and center-to-center hole spacing. This lug is pretty much a mystery as it does not show up on very many drums at all, and to me seems to be a short-lived experimental step between the large lugs and the smaller 3917. I've only seen these on snare drums, super seldom seen lug. Next is another lug that many don't even know exist, the cast B&B lug. This extremely short-lived lug has a completely different footprint and hole spacing than its drawn brass cousin. It almost has more in common with the Beavertail lug, and I'll explain why. Rogers was well aware of the issues with bread and butter lugs. As we all know, the drawn soft brass would crack in the corners when under high tension, and sometimes the tabs that accept the installation screws would snap off. Responding effectively to correct this, Joe Thompson designed the cast version of this lug that we're discussing. Now, legend has it that Ellis Tolan, who had already been working closely with Rogers on some other important innovations, received a few drums at his store, Music City in Philadelphia, noticed these new lugs, and contacted Ben Strauss saying that they looked far too similar to the faulty lugs, and how consumers and retailers may think they were the same lugs and be discouraged from buying or selling the product. Ellis strongly suggested a complete design overhaul. This is when Joe Thompson went back to the drawing board and designed the Beavertail lug, which had a similar cast design. Both being a pot metal cast strategy with boss style installation and a lip at the base for a more sturdy footprint. When I look at these lugs side by side, I can't help but immediately wonder why the drastically different hole spacing. 3917 at 1 5/8 center to center hole spacing, Cast B&B at an even 2-inch center-to-center hole spacing, and Beavertail at a 1 15/16 center-to-center hole spacing. Why? We'll never know. It is worth noting that the very first run of Beavertail lugs in 1963 had an issue of their own. The threads accepted a 1024 screw, just as the B&B before it, and left the boss outer circumference material far too thin, and they would sometimes snap off. They quickly changed to an 832 screw and the problem was solved. As you can see here, this is a first-generation Beavertail lug, as all the present lugs accept the same 1024 screw, and the Beavertail remained on Rogers drums for the duration of their proper existence. I've only ever seen the cast B&B lugs on Luxor model snare drums, and very few at that. Was this because it was a 6-lug drum and less lugs meant more tension on each lug, so they experimented with a new lug design to see if it would prove to be desirable? No way to know. But it is a theory. These forgotten lugs will always be an interesting part of Rogers' history and evidence that they were always evolving and looking to improve. Thank you for watching.